Hello world, this is Lauren. This is my third video on tracing Indigenous ancestry, and we're using the basis at this point of the Tracing American Indian and Alaska Native Ancestry Guide that is released by the Department of the Interior and the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And so in the previous video I was speaking about how I make packets and I include the Federal Register in the packets that contain the Guide to Tracing American Indian and Alaska Native Ancestry. And there is a lot, again, that can be said about these guides, about the guidelines as to how tribes are federally recognized or not. There are also state recognized tribes, which I will address very briefly. But what I just want to communicate at this point is information about what this document is and what it contains. So you'll see that this Federal Register is dated February 1 of 2019. I am making this video in July of 2020. As far as I know, there hasn't been an update to the Federal Register with regards to this information since then. I also know that sometimes it changes multiple times in a year. There are other times where it doesn't change for a whole year at a time, or maybe even more. And so the Federal Register is information that is put out and is effectively law. And so it's formatted in this tri-columnar format, and you can see that it's a lot of reading. It can be a lot to take in, especially if you're looking at this for the first time. And it's also got a lot of information that's really condensed. So what this reads is Department of the Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, and then what I've highlighted: Indian entities recognized by and eligible to receive services from the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs. And this goes through in alphabetical order the list of what at this point in time of publication was 573 tribal entities. And I want to be really clear that cultural identity is not necessarily contained within just the name of the tribal group. This is also how the United States government has regulated the tribes in order to determine who is who to give money to, where they're located, etc. And so we have a section, I didn't highlight it in this packet, but this is where that list starts as to Indian tribal entities within the contiguous 48 states recognized by and eligible to receive services from the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs. So you can see that there. And it goes on. And on. And on. And on. And on. And we get to a point where I have just a little small highlight. Native entities within the state of Alaska recognized by and eligible to receive services from the United States Bureau of Indian Affairs. And again, long list that goes front page and then a back page. And I see that the verbiage used is often village. There is also verbiage of tribe. I also see council. And I want to be really clear that I am from a federally recognized tribe, Eastern Shoshone or Shoshone. And I am not myself Alaska Native, and so I'm not sure if there's a specific term or phrase or if it changes for each entity. And I just want to be clear about that. I see a variety of names that are used. Again, a lot of these names are also in English. Anyone who understands their indigenous history knows that when colonizers came, the tribes did not speak English, or we assume that there weren't any. I won't digress into alternative history. I will simply say that this is documentation that is based on colonizer history, and so that is the lens that this particular video is presented from. In the packets I make, I also include a list of state-recognized tribes, and I want to be very clear that state recognition is very different from federal recognition. I'll talk about that in another video, but when people are trying to trace their ancestry, they sometimes run into difficulty because the tribal entity that they can trace their affiliation to is not federally recognized. And so this packet is a little bit out of date. It is really difficult to track state-recognized tribes because of the fact that there are so many different states and legislation is constantly moving and changing throughout different states, including and not limited to recognition of tribes. And so I'm going to conclude this video. Again, this is Lauren. Thank you very much.